I stepped off my bus at 6:52 a.m. on October 12 and checked my phone while the diesel engine ticked and cooled behind me. A calendar notification glowed on the screen: estate planning meeting with Dad, 10 a.m., quarterly. I stared at it. My husband's calendar. Synced to mine by accident 6 months ago when he tried to help me set up a new phone. He'd never unsync it. I scrolled back. Every Thursday for the past year. Always the same 2 words. Estate planning. If you're listening to this and you want to know how it ends, follow this channel now. You won't want to miss what happened when I finally walked into that meeting uninvited. My name is Diane Hollis. I drive the number 47 route in Knoxville, 5 days a week, same loop through downtown and up to the North Ridge neighborhoods where the houses have circular driveways and the garbage cans are hidden behind lattice. I've driven a bus for 11 years. You learn to read a route the way other people read people. You learn where the blind corners are. Where someone will step into the street without looking. Where the schedule has slack and where it doesn't. You learn that being early is just as bad as being late. You learn to keep your hands steady and your face neutral no matter who gets on, no matter what they say, no matter how they look at you. A bus driver's job is to arrive on time and make no sudden moves. I met Aaron Hollis on my route. He got on every morning at the Commerce Street stop, always in a suit, always with a coffee that smelled like vanilla and too much sugar. He smiled at me for 3 weeks before he said good morning. He asked me out 2 weeks after that. We were married 10 months later at the courthouse, because he said his father wouldn't approve of spending money on a wedding when we could put it toward a house. I thought that was practical. I thought it was love. His father's name is Leonard Hollis. Leonard owned a commercial real estate development company in Knoxville for 30 years before he semi-retired and started splitting his time between board meetings and his lake house in Gatlinburg. Leonard has a voice like gravel wrapped in velvet, and he shakes hands the way people sign contracts, firm, fast, like the terms are already settled. The first time I met him, 3 days before the courthouse wedding, he looked at me for 5 long seconds and said, "A bus driver." Not a question. A categorization. Aaron said his father just needed time. I gave him 11 years. For the first 5 years, I was invited to Sunday dinners. Leonard's house sat on a hill above the Tennessee River, all windows and white stone, with a dining room table that sat 12. I was always placed at the far end, across from Aaron's younger brother, Kyle, who worked in the family business and talked about zoning permits and tax increment financing districts the way other people talk about sports. Aaron sat in the middle, near his father. His mother had died when he was 16. There were no pictures of her anywhere in the house. The dinners were performances. Leonard would ask Aaron about work. Aaron was a project manager at the company by then, and Aaron would report like a student hoping for approval. Leonard would nod. Sometimes he'd offer a correction. Once or twice a year, he'd say, "Good work." I watched my husband glow when he heard those 2 words. Leonard never asked me about my work. If I volunteered something, he'd nod politely and turn back to Aaron. After the first 2 years, I stopped volunteering. Then, in year 6, the invitation stopped. Aaron said his father wanted to keep the dinner small. Just him and Kyle. Business talk. Strategy sessions. I said fine. I worked Sundays sometimes anyway, covering shifts. Aaron came home from those dinners smelling like bourbon and his father's cigars, and he'd kiss me on the forehead and say it had been boring. I believed him. Then the calendar synced, and I saw the pattern. Every Thursday. 10 a.m. estate planning meeting. Aaron never mentioned them. Not once. I scrolled forward. The meetings were scheduled out through the end of the next year. I am a bus driver. I know what it means when someone takes the long route on purpose. I didn't confront Aaron that morning. I went to work. I drove my route. I picked up the downtown nurses getting off 3rd shift, the high school kids heading to early jazz band practice, the man with the oxygen tank who rides to dialysis every Tuesday and Thursday and never says a word. I smiled. I made my stops. I stayed on schedule. But the whole time I was reading the route backwards, figuring out where the turns had been, where I'd missed the signs. That night, I asked Aaron casually how his week was going. He said fine. Busy. I asked if he had any meetings coming up. He said just the usual. Nothing special. I nodded. I smiled. I let it go. I started keeping my own calendar after that. I began tracking the Thursdays. I didn't tell Aaron I could see them. I just noted when he left the house at 9:30, when he came back around noon. I noted when he said he'd been at the office, or meeting a contractor, or getting lunch with Kyle. The explanations were never the same twice, but the meetings never moved. In December, Aaron came home from a Sunday dinner and told me his father had decided to do some family restructuring. Leonard was getting older. He wanted to make sure the business stayed in the family. Aaron said it like good news, like an inheritance he'd just been promised. I asked what that meant for us. He said Leonard was setting up a trust. Aaron and Kyle would be co-trustees when Leonard passed. The company, the properties, the lake house. All of it protected. I asked if I was in the trust. Aaron looked at me, and for just a moment something moved behind his eyes. Pity, maybe. Or embarrassment. It's a family trust, Diane. I'm your wife. You know what I mean. I did. That night I lay awake and thought about routes. A bus route is a loop. You end where you began. You can ride it forever and never get anywhere new. The trick is knowing when to get off. I started making calls in January. I didn't call a lawyer first. I called my mother. She lived in Chattanooga, an hour south, in the same house where I grew up. She'd been a paralegal for 30 years before she retired. She didn't like Aaron. She'd never said so out loud, but I could tell by the way she hugged me a little longer every time I visited, like she was trying to hold me in place. When I told her about the calendar, about the trust, about the Sunday dinners I was no longer invited to, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Do you have a joint bank account?" "Yes." "Do you own the house together?" "Both our names are on the deed." "Good. Don't touch anything yet. Just watch." I watched. In February, Aaron started staying late at the office 3 nights a week. In March, he took a weekend trip to Nashville with Kyle, business, he said, a property they were looking at. In April, Leonard called the house for the first time in 2 years. I answered. He asked for Aaron. I said he wasn't home. Leonard paused, then said, "Tell him I called about the paperwork." I said I would. I didn't ask Aaron what paperwork. I didn't need to. I called my mother back. "I think they're trying to move assets," I said. She said, "Then you need a forensic accountant." I found one in Knoxville named Iris Verne. She was 56, wore reading glasses on a chain, and had a voice like she'd spent her whole life explaining things twice to people who didn't want to listen. I met her at a coffee shop near the university on a Saturday in late April. Aaron thought I was working a shift trade. I told Iris everything. The meetings. The trust. The Sunday dinners. The way Aaron had started talking about money differently, casually, like we had less of it than we used to even though his salary hadn't changed. I told her I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I knew the route had changed and no one had told me. Iris stirred her coffee and said, "Do you have access to his accounts?" "We have a joint account for bills. He has his own for his salary." "Can you get statements?" "They come to the house. He keeps them in his office." "Get me 3 months. Recent." I did. I photocopied them at the library on my lunch break, 3 days in a row, 10 minutes at a time. Aaron's office was a converted second bedroom. He kept the door closed but not locked. The statements were in a filing cabinet, labeled by year, alphabetical and neat. He'd always been organized. It was one of the things I'd loved about him. I gave the copies to Iris the following week. She called me 4 days later and asked if I could come to her office. Not a coffee shop. Her office. When I arrived, she had the statements on her desk, covered in sticky notes and highlighter. Yellow for patterns. Pink for anomalies. There was a lot of pink. Your husband has been moving money, Iris said. Small amounts. Never enough to trigger a report. 1,000 here, 1,500 there. Always to the same account. It's not his. It's not yours. It's a business account under his father's company name, but it's a new LLC. Registered 4 months ago. Your husband is listed as a member. What does that mean? It means they're sheltering assets. If your husband files for divorce, or if the family tries to claim financial hardship for any reason, this money won't show up in the usual places. It's clean. Quiet. Legal, technically, but only if no one asks the right questions. I thought about schedules. About slack in the line. About how much room you have to drift before someone notices. How much has he moved? So far? 47,000. I sat in Iris's office and felt the same thing I'd felt the first time I'd ever had to brake hard on black ice, a strange calm, a clarity that comes when you realize the spin has already started and all you can do is steer into it. What do I do? I asked. Iris leaned back in her chair. Depends what you want. If you want to fight, we document everything and you take it to a divorce attorney. If you want to wait and see where this goes, you do nothing and we keep watching. If I do nothing, what happens? Eventually he files. Or his father does it for him. They'll have moved everything they can move. You'll get the house, maybe, and whatever's left in the joint account. And they'll have made it look like there was never anything else. I thought about Aaron's face the night he'd told me about the trust. The pity. I want to fight, I said. Iris smiled. Not warm. Professional. Then we need more than bank statements. Over the next 8 weeks, I became a different kind of driver. I still ran my route. I still smiled at passengers. I still made my stops on time. But in between, I was tracking another route entirely. I photographed every piece of mail that came to the house with Leonard's company name on it. I recorded the dates and times Aaron left for his Thursday meetings. I started checking the trash before Aaron took it to the curb. People throw away the strangest things when they think no one's looking. I found printed emails. Draft contracts. A handwritten note in Leonard's angular script that said, finalize by June. No later. I gave everything to Iris. She gave it to someone else, a lawyer named Patrick Kane who specialized in asset concealment and fraudulent transfer. He had an office that smelled like old paper and new carpet, and he didn't waste time on pleasantries. They're trying to divorce-proof him, Patrick said. Classic strategy. Move everything into the family business or a trust before the marriage dissolves. When you file, he'll claim he's cash poor. The house is mortgaged. The cars are leased. His salary is modest. You'll walk away with almost nothing, and in 5 years he'll be living very comfortably again. Can you stop it? If we move first, yes. If we wait for him to file, it gets harder. Then we move first. Patrick nodded. I'll need you to do something you won't like. What? Pretend you don't know. For a few more weeks. I need them to finish what they're doing. If they think you're onto them, they'll freeze everything and we'll have a harder time proving intent. Let them think you're not paying attention. I am a bus driver. Pretending not to notice is half the job. I went home that night and made dinner. Aaron came in at 7, kissed me on the cheek, and asked what we were having. I said chicken and rice. He said it smelled good. We ate at the kitchen table, the television on low in the other room, and he told me about a zoning hearing that had gone well. I asked questions. I laughed in the right places. I refilled his water. He had no idea. The last Thursday in May, Aaron left for his 10 a.m. meeting as usual. I was off that day. I waited until his car disappeared down the hill, and then I drove to Leonard's office. It was in a mid-rise downtown, all glass and granite, with the company name in brushed steel letters by the elevator. I didn't go inside. I sat in my car across the street and waited. Aaron's car was in the garage. So was Kyle's. At 11:43, they came out together, Aaron and his father and his brother, all three in suits, walking toward a restaurant 2 blocks down. They looked like a unit. A family. I took a picture. Patrick had told me documentation was everything. Prove the pattern. Prove they were acting together. Prove it wasn't just Aaron making bad choices, it was a coordinated plan. I watched them disappear into the restaurant, and then I went home. In June, Aaron started talking about needing to reevaluate our finances. He said we were spending too much. He suggested I pick up more shifts. He said his salary might not be going up this year the way he'd hoped. I nodded. I said I'd look at the budget. That week, another $8,000 moved out of his account. Iris caught it in real time. She'd set up alerts. She called me from her car. "They're accelerating," she said. "Something's coming." I called Patrick. He said, "Then we go now." On June 22nd, I filed for divorce. I didn't tell Aaron. The papers were served to him at Leonard's office on a Thursday morning, right before his 10 a.m. meeting. Patrick arranged it that way on purpose. Maximum disruption. I was on my route when it happened, rolling through downtown, passengers getting on and off, the sun bright and hot through the windshield. Aaron called me 14 times that day. I didn't answer. He came home that night and found me sitting at the kitchen table with my lawyer's card in front of me. He said, "What the hell is this?" I said, "I think you know." Aaron stared at the card. Patrick Kane's name in raised lettering. Then he looked at me, and I watched him recalibrate. The pity was gone. Now it was something else. Anger, maybe. Or fear. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Diane, if this is about the dinners, I can talk to my dad." "It's not about the dinners." "Then what?" I didn't answer. A bus driver learns when silence is the best route. Aaron sat down across from me. His hands were shaking. I'd never seen that before. "We can work this out," he said. "We don't need lawyers. We can just talk. We're past that." "Why?" "Because I've been busy? Because I've been trying to build something for us?" "You haven't been building anything for us, Aaron. You've been building something without me." His face changed. Just a flicker. Calculation. "I don't know what you think you know. I know about the LLC. I know about the transfers. I know about the meetings every Thursday for the past year. I know your father's been helping you move money so I wouldn't see it when you finally worked up the nerve to leave." The room went very still. Aaron's voice dropped. "He said you'd never notice." There it was. Truth, by accident. I stood up. "I notice everything." He tried to argue. He tried to apologize. He tried to blame his father, then Kyle, then the lawyer who'd set up the LLC. He cycled through every excuse like he was searching for the one that would make me stop the bus and let him back on. I let him talk. And when he was finished, I said, "I'll be staying with my mother. My lawyer will be in touch." I left that night with 2 suitcases. Aaron didn't follow me. Patrick filed a motion for a forensic examination of all accounts held by Leonard, Aaron, Kyle, and the family business. We subpoenaed records going back 3 years. Leonard hired a lawyer within 48 hours, a man named Dominic Hale, expensive and loud, the kind who sends letters designed to scare people into silence. Patrick wasn't impressed. The depositions were scheduled for mid-August, in a conference room at the courthouse. Leonard. Aaron. Kyle. All three on the record. I wasn't required to be there, but Patrick said I could sit in if I wanted. I did. Leonard arrived first, flanked by Dominic. He wore a navy suit, crisp and perfect, the same way he'd looked every Sunday I'd ever seen him. He didn't look at me. Aaron came next. He looked thinner. Tired. He sat beside his father and stared at the table. Kyle came last. He gave me a small, embarrassed nod, like he wished he were somewhere else. The court reporter swore them in one by one. Patrick started with Leonard. Patrick's questions were calm. Precise. He asked Leonard about the company structure, the trusts, the LLCs registered in the past 2 years. Leonard answered smoothly. Yes, he'd done estate planning. Yes, he'd created structures to protect family assets. No, there was nothing unusual about it. Families with wealth did this all the time. Patrick slid a document across the table. Bank transfer records. Highlighted in pink. Can you explain these transfers from your son Aaron's personal account into an LLC that didn't exist until 4 months after his marriage? Leonard didn't blink. That's a business investment. Aaron is a member of that entity. He has every right to invest his own money. His own money, Patrick repeated. Earned during the marriage. Which makes it marital property. Which means moving it without his wife's knowledge could constitute dissipation of assets. Dominic cut in. That's a leap, counsel. You're assuming intent. Patrick smiled. Then let's ask about intent. He turned to Aaron. Did you tell your wife about these transfers? Aaron looked at his father. Leonard's face gave nothing away. No, Aaron said quietly. Did you tell her about the LLC? No. Did you tell her you were planning to file for divorce? Silence. Mr. Hollis, you're under oath. Aaron swallowed. I hadn't decided yet. But you were preparing for it. I was protecting myself. From what? Aaron looked at me for the first time. From losing everything. Patrick leaned back. What did you think you'd lose? Aaron didn't answer. Patrick turned to Leonard. Mr. Hollis, did you advise your son to move assets out of his personal accounts in anticipation of a divorce? Leonard's jaw tightened. I advised him to be smart. Is that a yes? I advised him to protect what's his. What's his, Patrick said. Not what's theirs. Dominic stood. This is harassment. My client has done nothing illegal. I didn't say illegal, Patrick said. I said intentional. He slid another document across. This is a memo, written by you, Mr. Hollis, dated March 18th. It was recovered from your office printer's network cache. Would you like me to read it aloud, or would you prefer to summarize? Leonard stared at the paper. I couldn't see his face, but I saw his hand curl into a fist on the table. Patrick read it anyway. Aaron, move the quarterly dividends into the 2024 entity before end of month. She won't ask questions. Finalized by June. No later. The room was silent except for the court reporter's keys. Patrick looked at Leonard. Who's she, Mr. Hollis? Leonard said nothing. Patrick turned to me. Mrs. Hollis, did your husband tell you about any quarterly dividends? No, I said. Did he tell you about any entities created in 2024? No. Patrick turned back to Leonard. You referred to her as she. Not by name. Like she wasn't quite a person. Just an obstacle. Dominic tried to object. Patrick ignored him. How much did you move in total? Patrick asked. Aaron broke. 63,000. Leonard shot him a look, sharp and cold. Aaron wouldn't meet his eyes. The deposition lasted 4 hours. By the end, Kyle had admitted he'd been told to keep Diane out of the loop. Leonard had refused to answer 12 questions on advice of counsel. Aaron looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Patrick asked his last question at 4:47 p.m. Mr. Leonard Hollis, do you believe your son's wife, he gestured to me, deserved to be treated as a full partner in her own marriage? Dominic objected. Patrick withdrew it. But Leonard answered anyway. I believe, he said slowly, that my son deserved better than a bus driver. The court reporter's fingers paused. Just for a second. Patrick nodded. No further questions. We walked out of the courthouse into the late summer heat. Patrick loosened his tie and said, that went better than I expected. What happens now? I asked. Now we settle. Or we go to trial. But after that? He nodded back toward the building. After that, they'll settle. He was right. Dominic called Patrick's office the next morning. They wanted to negotiate. We met a week later. Not at the courthouse. At a mediation office in a building that smelled like lavender and furniture polish, with abstract art on the walls and bottled water on every table. Leonard didn't come. He sent Dominic and a junior associate. Aaron came, but he sat in a separate room. Kyle didn't come at all. The offer was written on 2 pages. I would keep the house, free and clear. I would receive half of all marital assets, including the $63,000 that had been transferred, plus another $85,000 from Aaron's retirement account. I would receive 3 years of alimony. In exchange, I would sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the family business and release any claim to Leonard's estate. Patrick slid the paper across to me. It's a good offer. I read it twice. Then I looked up. What about the trust? You were never in it. You can't claim what was never yours. I know. But I want something. Patrick raised an eyebrow. What? I want a letter. What kind of letter? From Leonard. On the record. Apologizing. Patrick blinked. He'll never agree to that. Then we go to trial. Patrick stared at me. Then he smiled. You're serious. Completely. He called Dominic from the conference room. I could hear the conversation through the glass. Dominic's voice rising. Patrick's calm and steady. 5 minutes later, Patrick came back in. He said no. Then we go to trial. Diane, a trial could take a year. It'll cost you everything you just won in legal fees. And you might lose. I won't lose. You don't know that. I know what a route looks like when someone's trying to run you off it. And I know when someone's bluffing. Patrick looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and called Dominic again. Tell Leonard she wants a letter. 1 paragraph. An apology for how she was treated. Signed. Dated. On his personal letterhead. Or we'll see him in court, and I'll make sure every document we found ends up in the public record. There was a pause. Then Dominic said something I couldn't hear. Patrick hung up. He'll write it. The letter arrived at Patrick's office 3 days later, in a cream-colored envelope with Leonard Hollis's name embossed in the corner. Patrick scanned it and emailed it to me before I came in to sign the settlement. It was 4 sentences. Typed. Formal. Cold. Dear Diane. I regret that my actions and words during your marriage to my son caused you distress. It was not my intention to diminish your contributions or your value. I acknowledge that I should have treated you with more respect. I wish you well in your future endeavors. Sincerely, Leonard Hollis. It wasn't warm. It wasn't heartfelt. But it was signed in his own hand, and it was dated, and it existed. That was enough. I signed the settlement on September 9th. The house transferred into my name alone on September 30th. The money appeared in my account in 2 installments, one in October, one in November. Aaron moved out the first week of September. I didn't see him again. I heard from my mother that he'd taken a job in Atlanta. Something outside the family business. I didn't ask for details. Kyle sent me a text in December. Just 3 words, "I'm sorry, Diane." I didn't reply. Leonard never contacted me again. I kept driving my route. Same loop. Same passengers. Same stops. But everything felt different. The house was mine. The bus felt lighter. I started noticing things I'd stopped seeing, the way the morning sun hit the river, the old man who always said thank you when he got off at the library, the high school girl who sat in the back and read thick novels with cracked spines. In February, I got a letter from the transit authority. They were promoting me to route supervisor. It came with a raise and an office and the chance to design new routes across the city. I thought about it for a week. Then I accepted. In March, I sold the house. It had been Aaron's dream house, not mine. I didn't want to live in a place built on someone else's plan. I bought a small bungalow near the university, walking distance to the transit hub, with a porch and a window that looked out onto a street full of old maples. I planted a garden that spring. Tomatoes. Basil. Flowers I didn't know the names of. I learned them as they grew. One Saturday in May, I was pulling weeds when my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Kyle. I wanted you to know, Dad had a stroke last week. He's stable, but he's stepping down from the company. Aaron's not coming back. I'm taking over. I thought you'd want to know. I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better." I read it twice. Then I put the phone down and went back to my garden. I thought about Leonard sometimes. Not often. But when I did, I didn't think about the depositions or the letter or the money. I thought about that first dinner, the way he'd looked at me and said, "A bus driver." Like I was a route he'd already mapped and dismissed. People do that. They see your job, your clothes, the car you drive, and they think they know the whole map. They think they know where you're going and how fast you'll get there. They don't consider that you might know something they don't. That you might be driving towards something they can't see. Leonard thought I'd never notice the meetings. Aaron thought I'd never understand the money. They thought I'd just keep driving the same loop, never looking up, never asking why the route had changed. They were wrong. By the summer, I'd redesigned 3 routes in Knoxville. One cut 20 minutes off the north side commute. Another added stops near the new senior center and the community college. The third ran east through a neighborhood that had never had transit service before. People there had been taking 2 buses and walking half a mile just to get to the grocery store. The transit authority put my name on the press release. The local paper ran a story. Not a big one. Just a few paragraphs in the metro section. But my mother clipped it out and mailed it to me with a note that said, "Proud of you." I framed it. Not the article. The note. In August, I got another message from Kyle. This one was longer. "Diane, I don't know if you'll care, but I wanted to tell you. I've been going through the company files, cleaning things up. I found more memos from Dad. Instructions he gave Aaron. Plans he had. It was worse than we thought. He'd been telling Aaron for years that you weren't good enough for the family. He wanted Aaron to leave you before the estate was finalized. He thought if Aaron stayed married to you, you'd drain the family money. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I just thought you should know it was never about you. It was about him. He couldn't stand that Aaron chose someone he didn't control. I'm sorry I went along with it. I should have said something. I didn't. That's on me." I read it sitting on my porch, the evening cool and quiet. Fireflies were just starting to come out. I thought about what Kyle had written. It was never about you. It was about him. I believed that. But it didn't change the fact that Aaron had gone along with it. That he'd chosen his father's approval over his wife. That he'd lied, moved money, planned an exit, and never once asked himself what that said about who he was. I wrote back, Thank you for telling me. I hope you build something better than what he left you. Kyle never replied. I didn't expect him to. That fall, the transit authority asked me to speak at a regional conference in Nashville. The topic was equity in public transportation, how to design systems that serve people who've been left out. I said yes before I had time to talk myself out of it. I drove to Nashville on a Friday in October. The conference was in a hotel near the Capitol, all glass atriums and convention halls with names like Riverbend and Summit. I wore a blazer I'd bought the week before and carried a folder with printed copies of the routes I'd redesigned. There were 200 people in the room when I spoke. City planners, engineers, a few other transit supervisors. I talked for 20 minutes about the East Side route, about the neighborhood that had never been served before, about the woman who'd cried when the first bus pulled up because it meant she could finally get to her dialysis appointments on time. When I finished, people clapped. A man in the front row asked a question about funding. A woman from Memphis asked how I'd gotten community input. I answered them the way I'd answered passengers for 11 years, clear, direct, no wasted words. Afterward, a woman in her 60s approached me. She had white hair cut short and sharp, and she handed me a card. Her name was Dr. Lorraine Finch. She was a transportation consultant, formerly with the Federal Transit Administration. That was excellent, she said. Have you ever thought about consulting? I hadn't. You should, she said. There are cities all over the country trying to do what you just did. They need people who understand how systems work and who they're supposed to serve. If you're ever interested, call me. I took the card. I didn't think I'd use it. But I kept it. In November, Aaron's divorce was finalized. I got the notice in the mail. It was over. Legally, completely, finally over. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel relieved. I felt the way you feel when you finish a long route and step off the bus, tired, but steady. Ready for the next thing. In December, my mother came to visit. She stayed for a week. We cooked together, walked through the neighborhood, sat on the porch in the evenings with blankets and tea. One night she asked me if I was happy. I thought about it. I'm good, I said. She nodded. Good is better than happy. Happy comes and goes. Good stays. I thought about that a lot after she left. In January, I called Dr. Finch. She remembered me immediately. Diane. I was hoping you'd call. She had a project. A mid-sized city in North Carolina was trying to overhaul its transit system. They needed someone to come in for 6 months, assess the current routes, and propose a redesign. It paid well. It was contract work. I could go back to Knoxville when it was done, or I could take another project somewhere else. I said I'd think about it. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I said yes. I gave notice at the Transit Authority in February. They were sorry to see me go, but they understood. My supervisor, a man named Gene who'd been driving buses since before I was born, shook my hand and said, "You were always going somewhere, Hollis. I'm just glad we got to see part of the trip." I started in North Carolina in March. The city was smaller than Knoxville, quieter, with wider streets and older trees. I stayed in a short-term rental near downtown, a one-bedroom with hardwood floors and a kitchen window that looked out onto a park. I spent the first month writing every route in the system. I sat in the back. I listened. I watched who got on, who got off, where the gaps were. I talked to drivers. I talked to passengers. I mapped it all out the way I used to map my own life, looking for the blind corners, the stops that didn't make sense, the places where the route had been designed for convenience instead of need. By June, I had a full proposal. 12 new routes. 4 redesigns. 3 extensions. I presented it to the city council on a Tuesday night. They approved it unanimously. The new routes launched in September. I stayed through October to make sure they ran smoothly. Then I went home to Knoxville, packed up the bungalow, and put it on the market. Dr. Finch called again in November. Another project. A bigger city this time. A longer contract. I said yes. I've been doing this for 3 years now. I've redesigned transit systems in 7 cities. I've spoken at 4 conferences. I've trained new supervisors, written grant applications, testified at budget hearings. I've lived in places I never thought I'd see: Louisville, Raleigh, Madison, Eugene. I don't own a house anymore. I rent. Short-term leases, furnished places, flexible. I don't need routes the way I used to. I just need a route. Last month, I got an email from Kyle. He'd seen an article about my work in a trade magazine. He said Leonard had passed away in August. Quietly. No funeral. Just a small service. Aaron had come back for it, but he hadn't stayed. Kyle said he'd thought about reaching out sooner, but he didn't know what to say. He said he hoped I was doing well. He said he was trying to run the company differently. Trying to build something that didn't leave people out. He said he thought I'd want to know. I wrote back. I told him I was sorry for his loss. I told him I thought it was good that he was trying to build something better. I didn't tell him that I'd stopped thinking about Leonard years ago. That he'd become, in my memory, just a landmark on a route I didn't take anymore. Some people spend their whole lives trying to prove someone wrong. I used to think that's what I was doing. But I wasn't. I was just finding a better route. I'm in Portland now. Oregon, not Maine. The project here is different, not just routes, but a full accessibility overhaul. New buses. New shelters. New technology for riders with visual or hearing impairments. It's a 2-year contract. The longest I've taken. I like it here. The light is different. Softer. The people are quiet in a way that feels intentional, not cold. I've rented a small house in the southeast part of the city, near a street full of coffee shops and bookstores and a bakery that makes sourdough so good I buy a loaf every Saturday. I've started thinking about what comes after this. Not retirement, I'm only 43, but something more permanent. Maybe a house I keep. Maybe a job I stay in. Maybe something I build instead of fix. I don't know yet. What I do know is this: I'm not the person I was when I was married to Aaron. I'm not even the person I was the day I filed for divorce. I've spent 3 years moving through cities, learning systems, solving problems no one thought could be solved. I've learned that I'm good at this. That I don't need someone else's approval to know my own worth. I've learned that love is not the same thing as loyalty, and loyalty is not the same thing as silence. I've learned that the people who underestimate you are giving you a gift, even if they don't mean to. They're showing you exactly how much room you have to move. Leonard underestimated me because I drove a bus. Aaron underestimated me because I didn't ask questions. They thought quiet meant weak. They thought steady meant small. They were wrong. Last week, I got a call from a reporter. She's writing a story about women in transportation planning, and she wanted to interview me. We talked for an hour. She asked about my background, my work, how I got into this field. She asked if I'd ever faced obstacles because of my gender or my class. I thought about Leonard's voice. A bus driver. I said, yes. But obstacles are just part of the route. You don't stop because of them. You redesign. She liked that. She's using it as the closing quote. The article comes out next month. Dr. Finch says it'll be good for my reputation. She says I should think about starting my own firm. She says there's more work than any one consultant can handle, and I've built enough of a name now that cities would hire me. I'm thinking about it. I had coffee with Dr. Finch last week. She flew into Portland for a conference and asked if I had time to meet. We sat in a cafe near the waterfront, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. She's 72 now, still sharp, still working. She told me she's scaling back. Fewer projects. More time with her grandkids. She said she's been thinking about legacy, not what she's built, but who she's trained. You're one of the best I've seen, she said. You don't just see the system. You see the people inside it. That's rare. I thanked her. She leaned forward. I mean it, Diane. You could do this for another 20 years and still have cities calling. Or you could build something that lasts past you. A firm. A model. Something other people can learn from. I'm not sure I want to run a business, I said. Then don't. Partner with someone. Hire people smarter than you. Build something that doesn't need you to survive. She smiled. You spent 11 years driving the same loop. You've spent 3 years driving other people's loops. Maybe it's time to design your own. I thought about that all week. I'm still thinking about it. But for now, I'm here. I'm working. I'm good. On Sundays, I walk. There's a trail near my house that runs along the river, shaded and quiet. I don't listen to music. I don't bring my phone. I just walk. Sometimes I think about Aaron. Not often. But sometimes. I wonder if he's happy. I wonder if he ever thinks about what he gave up. I wonder if he knows that the version of me he married, the one who didn't ask questions, who sat at the far end of the table, who believed him when he said it was fine, doesn't exist anymore. I don't hate him. I don't miss him either. He's just someone I used to know. Someone I used to be married to. Someone who taught me, accidentally, that I was capable of more than I thought. I hope he's learned something, too. But that's not my job anymore. My job is to keep moving. To keep building. To keep redesigning the route until it serves everyone, not just the people who were there first. Money magnifies character. It does not create it. Leonard had wealth, and he used it to control. Aaron had comfort, and he used it to hide. I had neither, and I learned to see clearly. That clarity is worth more than anything they tried to take from me. I got another call from Kyle in late spring. Not a text this time. An actual call. I almost didn't answer. Diane, he said when I picked up. I hope this isn't weird. What do you need, Kyle? I don't need anything. He paused. I wanted to tell you something. I waited. I've been working with a therapist. Trying to figure out why I went along with everything Dad did. Why I didn't stand up for you. Or for Aaron, really. And I realized I spent my whole life trying to be the son he wanted. I thought if I did everything right, he'd finally be proud of me. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Turns out he was never going to be proud of anyone. Not me. Not Aaron. Not you. He just liked control. I know, I said. Yeah. I guess you did. Another pause. Anyway, I'm selling the company. That surprised me. You're what? Selling it. I don't want to run it anymore. I don't want to spend my life managing something he built just to prove I could. I'm keeping a few properties, enough to live on, and I'm selling the rest. I'm going to do something else. I don't know what yet. But something that's mine. Good, I said. And I meant it. I also wanted to say thank you. For what? For not settling. For making us face what we did. I know it cost you. But it cost us, too. And we needed that. He exhaled. You could have just walked away quietly. You didn't. And I think that's the only reason I'm here now, selling this thing, instead of spending another 20 years trying to be him. I didn't know what to say. Anyway, Kyle said. That's all. I won't bother you again. I just thought you should know. Kyle, I said before he could hang up. Yeah? I hope you find something worth building. Thanks, Diane. I hope you already have. He hung up. I stood on my porch for a long time after that, watching the street. A bus rolled past, not one of mine, just a city bus on its route. I watched it stop, watched people get on, watched it pull away. I thought about all the routes I'd driven. All the stops I'd made. All the people I'd never know I'd helped. I thought about Aaron, sitting in some office in Atlanta, probably still trying to prove something to a father who was gone. I thought about Leonard, who'd built an empire and died alone. I thought about Kyle, finally trying to build something that wasn't haunted. And I thought about me. 3 years ago, I didn't know what I was capable of. I thought my life was a loop. I thought I'd keep driving the same route forever. But I was wrong. Life isn't a loop. It's a map. And you get to redesign it as many times as you need to. In June, I finished the Portland project. The new system launched on a Tuesday morning, and I stood at one of the new shelters downtown and watched the first accessible bus pull up. An older man in a wheelchair rolled on using the new lift. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The fact that he could board at all, that was the point. The city threw a small reception that afternoon. The mayor gave a speech. The transit director thanked me by name. They gave me a plaque. I smiled for photos. I shook hands. And then I went home, packed my things, and got ready to leave. Dr. Finch called the next day. I have 3 cities asking for you. Take your pick. I looked at the list she sent. Sacramento. Minneapolis. Richmond. All good projects. All places I could go. All routes I could redesign. But for the first time, I didn't say yes right away. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course. Take your time. I spent the next 2 weeks driving. Not working. Just driving. I went down the coast, through California, into Nevada. I stayed in small motels. I ate at diners. I didn't have a plan. I just wanted to see what it felt like to move without a route. Somewhere outside Reno, I stopped at a rest area and called my mother. I'm thinking about starting my own firm, I said. She didn't hesitate. Then do it. I don't know if I'm ready. You redesigned 7 cities, Diane. If you're not ready now, you never will be. I thought about that. What if I fail? Then you fail. And then you try something else. She paused. You spent 11 years driving a bus because you thought that's all you could do. Then you spent 3 years proving yourself wrong. Don't stop now just because you're scared. She was right. I drove back to Knoxville. I hadn't been back in over a year. The bungalow had sold. My things were in storage. I didn't have a place to stay, so I got a hotel room near the river. The next morning, I went to the transit authority. Gene was still there, a year from retirement. He saw me walk in and grinned. Hollis. Heard you've been making waves. Trying to. Good. We need more of that. He poured me a cup of coffee from the ancient pot in the break room. What brings you back? I'm thinking about starting my own consulting firm. I wanted to ask your advice. He nodded slowly. You'll be good at it. You've got the skills. You've got the reputation. You just need the guts. I'm working on that. Don't work too long. Opportunities don't wait. He sipped his coffee. You know what I remember about you? First day you drove solo. You were terrified. I could see it. But you drove that route like you'd been doing it for years. Smooth. Steady. No wasted motion. And when you got back, I asked you how it felt. You know what you said? I shook my head. You said, I just kept my hands on the wheel. That's all you've ever needed to do, Diane. Keep your hands on the wheel. The route will come. I filed the LLC paperwork in July. Hollis Transit Consulting. Simple. Clear. Mine. I didn't have an office. I didn't have employees. I didn't even have a website at first. Just a name, a business license, and a list of cities that had already said they'd hire me if I went independent. Dr. Finch helped me set up the basics. Contracts. Liability insurance. A bookkeeper. She introduced me to 2 other consultants who worked independently, and we agreed to refer clients to each other when projects overlapped. By August, I had my first contract. A small city in North Carolina, not the one I'd worked in before, a different one, needed someone to evaluate their paratransit system. It was a 6-month project. Modest pay. But it was mine. I rented an apartment in Durham for the duration. 1 bedroom. A desk by the window. I bought a whiteboard and covered it with routes, schedules, maps. I worked alone. I liked it. By the end of the year, I had 3 more projects lined up. Word spreads fast in this field. If you're good, people talk. And I was good. I hired my first employee in February. Her name was Simone. She'd just finished her master's in urban planning and was looking for real-world experience. She was sharp, curious, and unafraid to tell me when I was wrong. I liked that. We worked together on a project in Virginia. Then another in Tennessee. By summer, I hired 2 more people. Then a 4th. I had to get an office. Nothing fancy. Just a shared workspace in Knoxville with enough room for desks and a conference table. We painted one wall white and turned it into a massive map wall. Routes. Systems. Cities we'd worked in. Cities we wanted to work in. It grew faster than I expected. By the 3rd year, Hollis Transit Consulting had 12 employees. We'd worked in 18 cities. We'd redesigned systems that served over 2 million people. We'd won 2 awards. We'd been written up in industry journals. I didn't do it for the recognition. I did it because I was good at it. Because I liked solving problems. Because I liked building something that helped people who'd been left out. But the recognition didn't hurt. Last month, I got an email from a woman I didn't know. She said she'd read about my company. She said she was a single mother in Louisville, working 2 jobs, and the new bus route we designed had cut her commute in half. She said it meant she could pick her daughter up from school now instead of paying for aftercare she couldn't afford. She said thank you. I printed that email. I pinned it to the wall in my office. That's why I do this. Not for the contracts. Not for the awards. For her. I'm writing this from my house in Knoxville. Not the bungalow I sold. A different house. Bigger. A place I bought 2 years ago when I realized I wasn't leaving anymore. It has a porch. A yard. A kitchen table big enough for my whole team when we meet here instead of the office. It's spring. The dogwoods are blooming. I planted a garden again, tomatoes, basil, peppers, flowers I finally learned the names of. This morning, I got a call from a reporter. Not the one from before. A different one. She's writing a book about women who've redesigned their lives after betrayal. She wanted to interview me. I said yes. She asked me what I'd learned. I told her this: you can't control what people think of you. You can't control whether they see your worth. You can only control what you do with the space they leave behind when they underestimate you. Leonard thought I was small. Aaron thought I was simple. They thought I'd stay in place. They gave me room to move. And I moved. I don't think about them much anymore. When I do, it's not with anger. It's not even with satisfaction. It's just with clarity. They were part of the route. A difficult stretch. A detour I didn't choose. But I got through it. And now I'm somewhere else entirely. The reporter asked if I'd forgiven them. I thought about that. Forgiveness isn't something you give because someone deserves it. It's something you give because you don't want to carry it anymore. I told her I didn't know if I'd forgiven them. But I'd stopped letting them take up space in my head. And maybe that was the same thing. She asked what I'd say to someone going through something similar. I said, keep your hands on the wheel. The route will come. It won't look like the one you thought you were on. But it'll take you somewhere worth going. She liked that. I hung up and walked out onto the porch. The street was quiet. A bus rolled past, one of the routes I'd redesigned years ago, back when I was still a driver. I watched it go. I thought about all the places I'd been. All the cities I'd worked in. All the people I'd never meet who were getting where they needed to go because of a route I'd drawn. I thought about Aaron, wherever he was. I thought about Leonard, gone now, his empire sold off piece by piece. I thought about Kyle, trying to build something new. And I thought about me. Not the woman I was 11 years ago, sitting at the far end of Leonard's table. Not the woman I was 3 years ago, sitting in a lawyer's office, signing papers with shaking hands. The woman I am now. A woman who owns her own company. Who employs 12 people. Who's redesigned transit systems in 18 cities. Who's been interviewed, quoted, written about. A woman who knows her worth. A woman who kept her hands on the wheel. If you've been through something like this, if someone tried to make you small, tried to take what was yours, tried to convince you that you didn't deserve better, I hope you know this. You are not the route they tried to put you on. You are the driver. And you can go anywhere.